Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on into Nashville's Morning News, along with John Abbe, Ken Weaver, Dan Mandis here. And Congressman Scott DesJarlais is joining us live from Washington, D.C. As always, Congressman, great to have you along. Boy, so much to talk about. First of all, I know that the information regarding, the national security threat that everyone's been talking about, it has been put into this skiff, I guess. And so now members of Congress, including yourself, can go look at this particular threat. Have you been able to go see it yet?
Well, I didn't go to the skiff yesterday. I serve on the Strategic Forces Subcommittee on HASC, and that deals with Space Force, threats in space, hypersonic weapons, missile defense. And so I actually got this briefing about a week ago in a skiff over here in Rayburn, along with the rest of my colleagues on Strategic Forces. So I was aware of it, and I was a little baffled because it was a pretty close hold, and you have different levels of classification. You have top secret, you have top secret SCI, which means in a skiff where a secure compartment where there's no phones, no Apple Watches, all that. And then there's also like special access programs, which are more like DARPA, James Bond, things under development. And so, yeah, I was a little bit surprised when that was released to everybody because, I'm not saying people aren't great at keeping secrets, but what you're hearing in open sources on the news is not all of what we learned, but it's enough to kind of confuse people and concern people. And so I'm not exactly sure why Representative Turner made the move that he did. I'd say it's highly unusual. And, is there an ulterior motive because of Ukraine funding? I'm yet to decide that, but it honestly wouldn't surprise me.
See, that's what I thought, Congressman, when I opened up the program at 5 a.m. I told the story, but then, I'm just very cynical about all of this because Turner is a guy who is very pro-Ukraine funding. He's been demanding it. And what better way to do that than to, paint as some sort of a big national security threat, something with Vladimir Putin. And so, to me, there's a couple of things going on here. And I think there might be some manipulation going on, especially since, Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor for Biden, Jake Sullivan and some of these other folks in the Gang of Eight were already scheduled to get together. So, and this is not new. I mean, Vladimir Putin has had the ability, from what I understand, and you know more than I do, but I'm doing my research on this. I mean, you and I think have even spoken about Vladimir Putin has the ability to shoot down our satellites already.
Yeah, I mean, the Chinese have a lot of technology. The Russians have a lot of technology. Frankly, we have a lot of technology. And a lot of times when we get briefings, it's in regards to our adversaries' threats. Occasionally we get briefings on where we're at. I had almost a 2-hour briefing in a skiff yesterday that dealt more with our capabilities. And so there's two sides to every story. But, I mean, go back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was probably one of the biggest threats America ever knew, and Russia has the capability to basically annihilate the world, and so do we, and now China and several other nuclear-armed countries. So, I mean, there's not a lot bigger threat than a nuclear war. Putin likes to rattle his saber, and I got to be careful what I say, but economically, China and the U.S. probably have a higher capability. I think Russia, with their war in Ukraine, knows that they probably can't keep up, so Russia seems to keep developing these nouveau top secret type weapons that try to give them an advantage. But the bottom line is the end game. If we got to a stage where they were doing something like they're talking about in the news yesterday and today in space, we probably got way bigger problems. And we were concerned about Putin using low-yield nuclear weapons on the battlefield, and I think that's a threat too. It's their escalate to de-escalate. So this is just another tool in his box, and it's concerning. I mean, the whole thing is concerning. But is there manipulation going on here? I'm kind of like you. My hunch is yes, because I also get briefed every month on the Ukraine war. And I have, believe it or not, we're at the 2-year anniversary this month of the start of that war. and basically they're at a stalemate. And so when they throw a number at us from the Senate of $95 billion to fund Ukraine for $60 billion, Israel for 15, Taiwan for 5, and I don't know where they come up with these numbers and how they come up with these numbers, but I know what their needs are militarily and what they cost. We've been giving Ukraine $300 million every year through the NDA since Russia invaded Crimea to help train and so on. It's more expensive now, but to me that number is nowhere near $60 billion. So the taxpayers who are footing this bill need President Biden to go on TV, and I've asked this, and members on both sides of the aisle in these briefings that are regarding the Ukraine war, he needs to go on TV and tell the American people why it's so important that we spend their hard-earned money to support this war in Ukraine. And we've been imploring them to do that for 6 months, because it's hard for me to get on your radio show or come back home and talk to my constituents and tell them why Ukraine is more important than the United States when we're literally being invaded from the northern and southern border. People are dying, drug overdoses, sex trafficking. Everyone's being impacted in every community, and we have all these concerns about everyone else when we can't even save ourselves.
Let me ask you this, because a lot of people, you know, the good news is that people every day are discovering this radio show and this radio station, which is, you know, fabulous. The bad news is sometimes we have to go over some of the same things at different times. And so let me ask you this question. When you go into that skiff, talk about what exactly, because somebody just sent a text to the super text line. What is this skiff that everybody's talking about? I mean, I know what it is and you know what it is, but, you know, take 30 seconds out and explain to folks what exactly happens when you go into a skiff.
Okay, well, a skiff is just a secure compartment. So I'm sitting in my office talking to you. For all I know, the government's got my office bugged. They're listening in on the phones. In a skiff, it's swept for bugs. There's no communication equipment in there. You leave your phones at the door, Apple Watches. If you take notes, Biden should pay attention to this. You cannot take them from the skiff. You leave all that information in there. They have classified documents that you follow along while whoever is presenting, whether it's intel experts from the DOD, NSA, we have all kinds of different people that present to us, and everything in there is locked down. So in theory, no one can listen, no one can spy, and it's a very secure place that you can talk. And you're not supposed to discuss what you learn in these compartments outside, even with colleagues that are in there. You have to be in a secure location to even have these discussions. So it's the whole idea is to keep the information that's being shared very classified, very secret. So a skiff is literally just a room that is highly secured.
So let's go ahead and talk about what would happen if Vladimir Putin did. And I realize we just spent the last, 5-8 minutes talking about how this may be something, a more strategic narrative by Congressman Turner to get money for Ukraine. But all that being said, what would be the ramifications of a Vladimir Putin shooting down one of our satellites or a number of our satellites?
Yeah, and it's more complicated than that, and it's not really something I can go in directly as far as what the nature of this threat is, but pretty much all of the satellites we communicate with, when you drive your car and you're getting, turn left at exit 61, that's bouncing off of satellites that are in low Earth orbit. So there's low Earth orbit, geosynchronous orbit, middle Earth orbit, high Earth orbit. But most of what we use to function day to day is in low Earth orbit. So let's say he has a weapon that could essentially disrupt everything in that orbit. It would really compromise the ability to do day-to-day activities. If you have Starlink, if you have things like that, that all goes away. But more importantly, the military functions a lot off of GPS, and so it wouldn't take you back to the Stone Age, but it would change things to a more conventional type warfare. Let's say World War I trench warfare. We have other means to get around this, but it would make things highly complicated, highly inconvenient. You've heard in open source is about an electromagnetic pulse where they detonate a nuclear weapon, and it takes out our power grids. You can't land aircraft, things like that. Cyber threats, same thing. They can pretty much shut things down. That would be a huge act of war to do something like that, and would invoke a probably proportionate response. So it's not something that he wants to do. To me, it would be a desperation move if he was really backed into the corner. And Putin loves to do that. He likes to say, don't mess with me. I can make everybody's life hell. Well, he'd be making his own life hell and the whole world's life hell. So there's all these weapons out there that are a huge threat.
Right.
And so, that's kind of the way I'm looking at this. And so again, getting back to the theory, was this to try to push people into saying, hey, we need to take this funding of Ukraine seriously. And I'm not saying we don't. Again, constituents have a lot of ill feelings about funding wars in other countries when we have so many issues here at home. And I think that we can walk and chew gum, but before we put that gum in our mouth, we need to take care of our southern border. And I think that's the posture here in the House is, President Trump wanted $6 or $8 billion to secure the border and build the wall in 2019. He was told to go pound sand by the Democrats. And then they have the audacity to send us $95 billion, 10 times that amount, to secure other nations' borders when we all see every day what's happening here at home. So I don't think Republicans are just being stubborn. Let's do things in the proper order. Let's secure our country before we start securing other countries.
Congressman, last question here. Surprisingly, Congressman Mark Green announcing his retirement yesterday afternoon. Very surprising to a lot of us. I don't know. Were you surprised? Do you have any thoughts? Have you spoken to the congressman?
I was surprised. I had a reporter ask me the day before yesterday if I had heard that Mark Green was retiring, and I said I had not. And I went and asked Mark directly, and he said, no, I don't know why they would be saying that. 24 hours later, he announced his retirement. Mark's a friend, and I was concerned that, is something wrong? Is something wrong health-wise? And I texted him last night, and he said, no, he's all good. He just has he feels like he needs to serve in another way. So I don't think we've seen the end of Mark Green. He'll finish out his term this year. He's doing a great job at DHS with what he has to work with, considering Mayorkas and the Biden administration refused to budge on their broken policies. But I think Mark's fine, and I'm sure he'll come on and talk to you. I'm not going to speak for what his intentions are, but his health is good, and he's going to hopefully move on to bigger and better things.
Congressman, is he running for governor?
If it's a secret, it's probably the worst kept secret. I think the first time I met Mark 6 years ago or so, he had intention of running for governor. He was, considering a run for Senate, and Trump endorsed Haggerty, and Mark was going to focus on some other things. But he and a number of others have indicated that they have an interest in doing that. So if he's going to make that announcement, I'll let him do it. But certainly that rumor has been heavily floated.
Thank you, Congressman. Scott DesJarlais, very much appreciate you appearing on Nashville's Morning News.
Thanks for having me on, Dan.
All right. Couldn't really get it out of him that Green was going to run for governor. You think we can get him on, you think we can get Congressman Green to make the big announcement on Nashville's Morning News?
Yeah, let's call him up.
I don't think he's going to be.
Wake him up right now.
I don't think he's going to be open to a phone call from WTN right about now. Nope.